Hey, Will, I'm checking to see if you have everything ready for the celebration. It's coming.
You can sell your home no matter what time of year it is, but the data shows that some months are better than others. We use a metric known as months of inventory to express a correlation between supply and demand. If, on average, there's 200 homes selling each month and there's 400 homes on the market, you'd say there's 2 months of inventory. As of December 2024, North Florida has nearly 8 months of inventory on the market, up slightly more than 20% since July.
Dude, I'm happy we were able to make this happen because I've been trying to get you on for a little while now, and you've been so busy with the beach. But man, dude, I'm happy to see the direction that the beach has gone on a lot of different aspects. There's a lot coming, but man, I'm bringing you on because it seems like people that are in office right now, not people know policy that you stand behind, and they know what direction you're wanting to take with the city. They don't really know who you are as a person unless you knocked on their door and talked to them, but it's almost impossible to hit every single person. So part of bringing on people that are already sitting in office is just to kind of talk about that. So I kind of wanted to start with your background.
My background, okay. Well, I grew up in Kissimmee, Florida. So Central Florida, or as we say down here, or up here, South Florida. Yeah, Disney World. Probably been to Disney World about 50 times, which doesn't compare to some of the people here. I tell you what, people go to Disney a lot here. I was like, wow, man, it's like every third weekend some people go. So, just kind of normal kid, played soccer, loved it down there. Not the most cohesive community, I would say. I didn't realize until I'd lived a few other places that, for example, people will wave at you in your neighborhoods, other places in the U.S. I was just like, wow, that's cool. So when I graduated high school, I got into a school up in upstate New York, up in Ithaca, New York. So I went up there. It's not the best student, right? I probably should have taken a gap year. I took a gap year. It was just in the middle. So when I got back and got serious, got through that schooling in 2009, did software, computer science. Then I went out to Silicon Valley for a little while, a few companies out there, paid off all my student loans, which were pretty substantial. But I mean, my goal was to get them paid off because my parents had co-signed them. So it was like, just pay them off, pay them off, pay them off. Mm-hmm. I wish I'd kept some of that stock. I tell you what, the stock at Amazon would have done me pretty well. But it was important to get them paid off before I did anything risky. After doing that, I started working with some startups. That was kind of the thing back then. So I went through about 3 different startups, different stages, kind of medium-sized, small, and then big for a startup. My last startup was fully remote. So when I was fully remote, I was realizing when I was up there in Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area, that I'm never going to be able to afford to live out here. Just talk about taking a $500,000 loan for a tiny lot in a transitioning neighborhood. And during the time I was there, the homelessness just went insane. They say California is 10 years ahead of everywhere else, and that's kind of good and bad. So if you move somewhere else, you can see the bad parts of what's coming, and then maybe take some of the good stuff. They have some nice coffee shops out there, so I'm glad to see we're getting some nice hangout kind of coffee shops down here, so that's cool. Moved to Colorado for family reasons. My parents ended up there. We went in on a house with my parents. The idea is I would move out there. They would then find a house. I'd buy them out. It never actually ended up happening. So, and then I was there. That was a little bit too rural for me. I was in rural Colorado. So it was like 15, or they would call it semi-rural because we were only on 5 acres. It took 15 minutes to get out of my neighborhood, which was rough socially, but it was good. I mean, beautiful, beautiful country over there. And then COVID hit. I'd been itching to get back to Florida. I was doing some business travel and ended up in Orlando for the first time in about 20 years. Got off the plane, felt the humidity hit. It's like, yeah, this feels like home, you know. Out west, you know, it's pretty dry out west. So, was looking to get probably somewhere in the Panhandle, accessible to other places around the South, and trying to stay in that small-ish town. I'd heard great things about PCB. Thought, oh, hey, you know, maybe one day. And then, like I said, COVID hit. As I was telling your producer, I had a great gym out there. First time I was really getting in shape in my life. They had this really cool model of semi-personal training. So smallish gym, and there are personal trainers in there. But have you ever dealt with a personal trainer?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I tell you, no personal trainer, no matter how dedicated, wants to watch you do 20 squats. Right? They start checking their phone or whatever. So the nice part about the semi-personal training is they'll go watch you, make sure your form's good, and then they can go check someone else who's also in there. So you kind of schedule time. So it's a really, really nice gym out there. Yeah. They closed that. They closed a whole bunch of other stuff. I didn't like the masks. I feel like I should have had to be.
Oh, dude.
Government can tell me I have to put a mask on my face.
Yeah.
Right. Or force private industry to tell me, which is how our federal government likes to work. They force private industry to do stuff to us. So Florida had opened up. Our wonderful governor, Ron DeSantis, had kind of towed the line, or, you know, had stood strong against some of the worst excesses of the COVID stuff. So came down here. When was that? It was Memorial Day 2020. Mm-hmm. This place had just opened up. I think it was closed for about a month, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of housing inventory on the market because ain't no one buying houses that you only get a virtual tour. So looked at about 50 homes, found one, put an offer on it. That's how I ended up here. I really just went through the neighborhoods. I had no idea. And just found one that fit budget. It's kind of small, you know, 1,200 square feet. But fit the budget. Seemed like a nice neighborhood. That's how I ended up here. I was still doing my remote job. So I worked remotely for a little while. And I was actually telling your producer that despite it being a remote job, they still had a vax mandate.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So...
Did you end up getting?
No.
Oh.
No. You know, however you feel about it, any new treatment, if you're not in the high risk category, there's always challenges to every treatment. So I'm kind of hey, you know, that thing ain't been out for a decade. We don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So I wasn't in the high risk category. So I just didn't comply. I was like, listen, this is a remote job, force me, basically. But I didn't say that. Just like, hey, you know, we'll see if it comes up. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit here doing my job. I actually ended up getting COVID from someone who was vaxxed. So there goes that, you know, flatten the curve idea. And the governor and legislator had passed that thing where if you had prior immunity, you wouldn't have. So the only reason I got a COVID test was to prove that I had COVID, just in case they were trying to force me to get the vax. But it didn't end up happening, although my company still ended up with something like 70 or 80% voluntary compliance.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a...
I think so many people were scared of losing their job.
Well, I was also, the company is a mixed U.S.-European company, and we love our European brothers and sisters, but they're a little bit more compliant bunch, right? Yeah, I think kind of thing that happened in the history of migration, including to this country, is all the risk takers came over here.
Yeah.
So you got to fairly, I think you're seeing some pushback in the extremes in Europe now. I don't follow the international news too much, but it seems like you're getting you finally pushed even the Europeans a little bit too far recently. So yeah, it's ended up here. It was working remotely.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point there. It's like Americans, we are very. I mean, it's just in our nature. I mean, that's how we took over this country. We're not
Pioneers,
shouldn't be. I think we have more people that are non-compliant that are compliant throughout, like as a national average. I don't know if that's true or not. Kendall, if you want to look that up, you can. How many people actually complied with it on the grand scheme of things? But you had brought up living out in California and the homeless issue.
Yeah, it's nuts. I had a homeless encampment on my street.
Really?
Yeah.
What part of California?
So San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh my.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also known as Silicon Valley.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. That's why I was out there for the job.
What did you do out there?
Software engineering.
Yeah. So I guess what I meant, like, when you talk about software engineering, that seems like a very, very broad.
It is very broad. I did server side stuff mostly.
Okay.
So there's what you call front end and back end. So front end's the pretty web development stuff. I ain't no good at any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But the back end, the stuff that actually does all the work, really, that's the kind of stuff I did.
Yeah.
So when I did the apartment rental company, for example, I did the software that integrated with everything to do the credit checks, background checks, to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like, but bringing up that part of the country, San Francisco, not just a homeless thing, but out there, it just seemed like, especially during the COVID, it's like everything shut down. Because I flew out to Reno, Nevada back in 2020, the summer of 2020, and we had some reason we flew from Dallas into San Francisco, and when we flew into the airport, it was a ghost town. There was nobody.
They call it the San Francisco airport. It's not in San Francisco. It's in this little town called Millbrae. It's like an annex of San Francisco. So, but yeah, I can imagine. I wasn't out there during COVID, but I can imagine. Which is, I guess they just like needles out there. Well, I tell you, in San Francisco, they have this like needle distribution thing. And you can check me on this, but I think they were giving out like 10,000 needles a month.
So I'll look that one up too. But for those numbers, 81% of U.S. adults 18 and over got their first jab. Then it dropped off to 69% finished the dosage for the initial, and then it steeply dropped off essentially. But
That is a lot higher than I thought it was going to be.
based on I think we know people, they got the first one because they were scared, but they got side effects, right? Not necessarily life-changing, but they got sick, tired, all those kind of things that were common, and they were like, I'm not getting a second one.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because originally so our Surgeon General, dude, I am not an expert at this, but Dr. Ladapo, which was the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, literally came out and said that, if you are a healthy adult and you did not need to take it. And then he came out months later and he was like, it's not good to take it at all. And then, dude, that's just it's a weird thing about government, right? Like, you can have all the experts in the world prove and show data that something is unsafe, but it has to go through all of these channels to get something like taken off the shelves because I know that the main, I guess the main like argument is how many people died from the vaccine.
Well, it's a weird one because it was a big deal back then, obviously. So I would debate people, and they would say, "Oh, well, look at Florida's death rate." I was like, I want to see an age normalized death rate because we have a lot of retirees in Florida, and so if let's normalize that compared to California, say that has a lot of younger people. mostly immigrants or the younger population there. But you can slice and dice statistics
Yeah.
any way you want. It's just really it's a risk management thing.
Well, that and the media was really involved with a lot of that stuff because I was at Fort Campbell,
That
Kentucky.
was probably all USAID, right?
I know
I
that.
tell you what.
Yeah, during when COVID hit, I was actually out in the field with like my platoon, and then COVID hit, and we were brought back from the field, and then it was like we got sent home, and they didn't want anybody coming up to the company or the battalion or anything like that. They wanted us to stay completely off base. And then it was like, oh, when you're home, make sure you're taking the proper precautions and all this different stuff. Well, at the time, I had a major injury when I was in the military, and I was back and forth from Vanderbilt Hospital.
Okay.
And so this was at the height, not at the height of COVID, but I was at the beginning of COVID. And so it was so crazy too, because this was like probably 3 weeks in to like these people trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
And it's like CNN, literally the morning before I went up to Vanderbilt Hospital, they had run like this story, and they were showing all these hospitals and how they were just packed out with people, and how
the Italian footage. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
the notorious Italian footage. Yeah.
So I was headed to Vanderbilt that day, and when I showed up to the hospital, like they were trying to say like the parking garage had people that were in the parking garage just lined up. I found a parking spot like that.
Yeah.
I walked in the hospital, and it looked nothing like what was on the news, and I was like, what hospital was that? They literally said it was Vanderbilt there in Nashville. I was like, there's nobody here. And then I ended up going in for my appointment and leaving. I immediately called my wife, and I was like, dude, the media is jacked up. And that was another thing that I think, I'll put on my tinfoil hat for a second, and you might not agree with me, but like I honestly believe...
I have no controversial opinions.
Well, I honestly believe that it was kind of like a test to see how I know that sounds stupid, but I honestly believe that the government was testing to see how compliant people would be in a major instance where there's this illness that's just spreading across the country.
Sure.
I don't know why you would want to collect data on that. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason, and I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, because I want to take over everybody. But I literally do believe somehow it was connected to just pull data and see how compliant people would actually be.
And then I got the numbers for the needles. So for 2017, San Francisco handed out 4.45 million needles. 2018 was 5.8 million needles. 2019, 5.8 million needles. 2020, 4.5 million. 2021, 6 million. 2021, 6 million. 2022 stayed the same, about 6 million. And then it's been going down since people have found out and the public backlash. So then they're going down to about 5 million, and then it says it's on a decrease.
Where did you pull that from?
I was just searching. So
Yeah.
that's what I found.
I mean,
But what are they using the needles for? Just anything and everything? Like, are they empty needles, or are they?
they use them for. It's a so-called safe injection policy.
Heroin.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they're
So
pretty.
it's supposedly for harm reduction, but they end up all over the sidewalks. Don't walk around San Francisco with flip-flops on. Oh. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, it's nasty.
that is insane. But I guess what
It's the only place, because we were a remote company,
yeah.
we would come together once or twice a year all together, once in Europe and then once in the U.S. San Francisco is the only place I've had visitors when I've lived, like I mentioned, a few places around this country, where I was embarrassed to have visitors in my country because San Francisco was so nasty.
Yeah.
So nasty, and it's due to bad policy, which is supported by the population.
So forgive me, but did you moved from San Francisco to Colorado, or you moved from?
Well, I worked in San Francisco for a little bit. I was a few places around the Bay Area: Mountain View, San Jose, and Oakland. couldn't afford San Francisco. Are you kidding me? So Oakland's across the bay. And there are nice parts and not so nice parts of Oakland. I was in a transitioning part.
So how big of a culture shock was it when you actually got here, other than the humidity? Was it when you got here to Florida?
I mean, it was because I had moved from rural Colorado. It wasn't much of a culture shock. I mean, just good old Americans here.
Yeah.
You know.
And then back down in Orlando, and then coming up here, which that's a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, Kissimmee has let's just say a different demographic profile than here. There are a lot of folks of different cultures there, so that really dominates. I think, and you can fact check me on this one, I think there are literally more Puerto Ricans in Osceola County than Puerto Rico. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Well, that was.
I mean, but I was off by like an order of magnitude with the needles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it turns out they had way more needles, right?
Six.
I hadn't looked that up in a while, and so I probably mentally revised it down because it sounds so insane.
Yeah. When you start talking about the needles and stuff like that, like the government is literally issuing clean needles so you can do drugs. That mentality is a little insane to me.
It is.
Because it's the same people that sit there and like they're against alcohol and tobacco and because California was like the first place where it's like, didn't California ban some type of nicotine, or if it looked like that it was, I'm trying to remember how it was.
The flavored in the packaging.
Yeah, like they were big on that because it was like trying to get kids away from like doing nicotine products. So it's like, we're going to take away these flavors. So it's like if you had, like when I was in high school, because I started dipping tobacco when I was in high school, I was like, one of my favorite things was Skull Peach.
Yeah.
So like that kind of stuff out in California.
So it worked on you. The kid flavors.
Well, whoa, did I just prove something right on that?
I mean, I remember when I was in college, they had, I think they were Camels. They had it in like a little tin, and they were all flavored.
Snus.
I don't know. They were fancy looking. They're all flavored.
Yeah.
I mean, gross flavors, but very popular with certain people. And I mean, sure, they banned that stuff.
Yeah. But why?
Different. If you do believe in federalism, right? Different subcultures in the U.S. have different views of freedom, views of risk tolerance, and so it's interesting out there because they have almost this weird, tremendous view of personal freedom in a sense. Like you have the freedom to kill yourself in public, essentially, slowly. You have the freedom to, have tremendous mental difficulties and live it out in the streets in public, right? What's the government going to tell you to put you in a mental home?
Yeah.
And then, as you indicated, there are some other areas where, we don't want the candy cigarettes.
Oh, yeah, that was something, that they...
Well, I mean, the candy flavors. There's also the candy cigarettes,
Yeah.
which I used to get at the skate rink.
Yeah.
Someone gave me one of those recently.
Yeah, we bought a...
Yeah, they taste like chalk. I don't even...
Yeah,
they're not even good cigarettes.
They're not good.
Yeah, they're the candy corn of cigarettes or fake cigarettes. There's gross all around.
Yeah,
Wait, are you a candy... You're not a candy corn fan, right?
I'm not huge.
You don't like the taste of wax?
Yeah. That is about what it's the texture, right? It's not necessarily the taste. It's not necessarily the flavor. It's the texture. Because you're right. I do feel like I'm chewing on a candle.
Yeah. They kind of look like candles too.
Yeah, they do. Kendall bought some of those candy cigarettes for my kids. Give it to them, but they're not really around people that smoke. So I mean, they're not understanding what it is. But I mean, that kind of stuff, I don't know, man. I feel like if you start banning stuff that's just been around for forever, and if you try to link it with tobacco use, and at that point, I think it's just being a little ridiculous. I mean, that's just my opinion. But yeah,
Yeah.
you do make me think with that though. Would I have gotten hooked on nicotine without those flavored like cans of dip? And I'm starting to think about it. I'm like, I don't know, because I hated wintergreen. Like it turned my stomach, and mint was just too strong. It gave me headaches. And so yeah, I was like searching around for the thing that was the best. So there might be a little bit of truth behind that.
You know, in many things, it's really easy to demonize people who think differently than you.
Yeah.
But one way I found to work with it is try to find where the truth is
Yeah.
from their perspective. Very rarely is anyone totally wrong. So it's like, where's the truth there? And let's see if we can work with that. You may disagree about where the balance is.
I'm noticing that more and more, especially now that we've started the podcast, because I'll have people on, and of course I get the Karen hate mail that comes in, and they want to go ahead and put somebody on blast. But I'm starting to see things. This has been good for me because for a while I had like this tunnel vision. Like I grew up a specific way, and if things didn't align with ethical values that I think, and then I keep going down this thing. But when I sit there and I talk to people, that even people that I don't agree with, that's something that just, my opinion, that's one of the things that's lacking right now in our communities and just throughout the nation, where enough people aren't coming together and talking it out. People get sidetracked in their egos.
Yeah, I mean, they'll get bowed up, right?
Yeah.
I find that when I talk to people who are, frustrated, which I get a decent experience talking to people who are frustrated in this role. And a lot of times, I don't want to say you want to wear them down, but you just, continue listening, push back if there's any, factual discrepancies that are material, but really listen until you kind of get to I don't want to say the point, because sometimes the emotion, the frustration is part of the point. But then you get down to it, and once they've calmed down a little bit and kind of let out where they're feeling, sometimes people really hold things in for a while. By the time they call me, then the conversation really starts. It's like, okay, this is there. We may have different trade-offs here, or there may be some facts that I didn't know, or some facts that you didn't know, but we can come to an understanding. And that's one thing I love about the people here, particularly, is people are willing to talk and actually fairly understanding. That's been my experience. They're very reasonable people here. Now, I mean, maybe not. You don't see that expressed in certain mediums online, particularly.
Yeah.
Because they're not talking to you face to face.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like we've had this conversation a million times. I call it the peanut gallery, but social media groups, these things, they come out and they talk about things. But honestly, it is kind of funny because who was it? I had on somebody, and they were talking about how a lot of people complain, but a lot of people don't come and bring this stuff to me as being a sitting official. And so, and then when they do, he's like, more times than none, we actually come to an agreement. And so it's like, instead of getting so upset about, the way you're looking at things from this side, right? Call me and we'll look at the whole picture together and we'll talk it out. And I really think,
there's this thing I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
There's this thing that happens online. Actually, took a little course on, semi-relevant to this in college, where because there's not much other information, facial expressions, people take what they think you're saying based on the small signals they see. They project that, and then they respond to that projection. Right.
It's a very that's a perfect way of
Yeah,
explaining it.
so that happens, and in general, when there's lack of information, people take a reputation, and then they shoot from what they believe the reputation is, and they just project.
Yeah.
And so that's a challenge where you want to get enough information out there and have real conversations with folks.
Yeah, being closed-minded when it comes to anything, just anything. It could be about the community. It could be anything in life. If you look at things through this closed-minded lens and you're not really paying attention to what anything else is going around, you'll never learn anything. That's, I think you could agree. I mean, we learn more from our failures. I learned more from my failures of being wrong, even about like stuff like this, having people on. I'll talk about something and then I'll talk to somebody else later on. I was like, man, I was actually wrong about that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have a hard time doing that. People can't accept the fact that maybe you didn't do all the research. Maybe there was more to look at. And then it's I know it's humorous in a way, but
Well, I mean, it's just I get a very common experience where if someone knows something more than what I know about something, it's like, why didn't you know that? It's like, I don't know everything, right? So thanks for telling me.
Well, that's what we've learned through the COVID thing.
Yeah.
Like, and these other issues that we've talked about. But I'm trying to be as careful as I can with this, but
Sure.
do you think you're hitting the milestones that you were wanting to see when you first started running for office?
I heard this thing even when I was running that kind of the first year you're basically the village idiot, right? I mean, if you've never been in office before,
Yeah.
right? So I will say it's been a tremendous learning experience, and just learning to work together, learning the constraints in government, and learning how to get things done. There's kind of any organization you've ever been in. There's a certain way to do things, right? Typically, it's the culture, and maybe there's some policies. In government, there's the culture, there's some policies, and then there's tremendous regulations because the government serves everyone, right? So it's learning how to get things done, and also still being out in the community. I spend a lot of time trying to make sure that I'm not, behind the desk answering emails, because it's really easy to get a certain sense of the community when you're fielding the complaints, answering emails, and it's important, addressing those issues, but then also just being out in the community, being accessible.
Yeah.
So, in certain, in terms of accessibility, I think, yes. In terms of other goals, I will say it's been a learning experience, really.
Yeah.
And it's gonna happen for anyone. We have a great team at the city. We have a great city council, and so it's been a process of all of us learning to go together. I will say I've stepped on a rake or two, but it's part of learning.
Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of go back in time to before you did run.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times, and but I actually don't know because I didn't follow that race as close as I wanted to because I had stuff going on at the time. But what was it when you moved here that was like, dude, like I have the ability, so I have the responsibility, and I want to run? What were the things that kind of?
Yeah. Well, absolutely not when I moved here. Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you kidding me? Anytime you move into an area, you want to take in that area. You moved there, right? You don't want to say, "Oh, I moved into an area. It should be like the place I just moved from."
Yeah.
Right. Right. So, really, I mean, my decision was fairly last minute.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can maybe see that in the campaign. It was a
But
little bit of a messy campaign.
I'm going to interrupt you just for one
Yeah.
second because you seem like a very, very calculated person. Yeah. Well, no. I mean, I talked to many people about you, and this is not me trying to stroke your
That's
ego.
why my
but,
ears were burning.
But like a lot of people that I talk to, when I bring up Stuart Tettemer, immediately it's like that dude is a brilliant guy. Like that's the first thing that comes out
Yeah,
of people.
I hate it when people say that.
Oh,
But,
really?
yeah.
Well, because it makes you feel like.
It's, I don't know that. I don't know that that's true.
Well, I do because when you were running, I did watch several forums and debates, and of course, the media. And when you speak, it's almost as if it's a good thing, not a bad thing, but you take emotion out of it, and it's just like, dude, this is what it is. Is this or this, and this is how things work, and the way.
Well,
that you
yeah, I
look
mean
at
that's
things.
in software engineering or in any engineering, any product
Black and
development,
white.
in product development, it's not. Well, it's
Yeah.
okay. Here's reality, and how do we get from the reality we have to the goal we're trying to achieve? And there are certain paths to get there. And so what are the trade-offs in those paths? Some may cost a lot more money. Some may require more social change. I mean, than is acceptable. And so, I mean, so why did I run? I was kind of frustrated with the way city government seemed to be interacting with the public. And I had a few people ask me to run, and I didn't really see candidates step up. And so I was like, well, if I have this frustration, I was in a point in my life in which I could do it. So, if you're going to complain about something, try and do something about it. So I thought I would keep my job while doing it. I became very aware during the campaign that I didn't have any indication from my work that it was slacking, but my personal level of standard of my work was clearly slacking because when you're doing software work, you have to, it's real focus intensive. And so I ended up thinking a lot about that campaign while I was at work, even though I was physically behind my chair typing away, I was distracted. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to take a little sabbatical from this career. We'll focus on the campaign. If the campaign succeeds, then, continue the sabbatical until I learn the new role. And if it doesn't succeed, I'd wanted to do something different after my previous job anyway. So I'll just take the opportunity to do that.
Would you say that the mayoral position is a full-time job?
It is a part-time job.
Well, I know it's part-time.
It is a part-time job.
But, okay, so you don't think that it actually requires more hours than just part-time?
It requires as many hours as you want to put into it.
Oh, okay.
I will say the demand's there.
Yeah.
There's always stuff to do.
Yeah.
And there's also learning how to delegate and how to share. Because the council manager form of government, which is a form of government, Panama City Beach that we have around here, you're not as a member of the city council or commission, as other people call it. I like council a little better. Maybe that's just me. You're doing legislation, and then you're hiring 3 staff members: the charter staff, city manager, city attorney, city clerk. And so if you start really getting into day-to-day stuff, which as a detailed guy, I will say it's hard for me to quell that impulse because I just want to, I mean, first of all, city government is cool. I just want to know everything. But that's not your role, right? Your role is, I've heard it described, and I really like this description, is the high and the low. I guess I did it wrong. high and the low, the low and the high. You deal with kind of in private industry, we call them customer service complaints. You deal with the customer service, the like, okay, this hasn't been handled at another level. Why is this pothole still here? Right? That kind of like very basic, very good interaction with public officials, or that residents or visitors or business owners have with public officials. And then you set kind of more longer term. And you do the longer term thing in conjunction with your fellow council members. So that's really the role. It's not, there are other forms of government, city, municipal government, where in the mayoral role, you'll be more of an executive. Here, you're more of a, I will say, kind of an ambassador, like a figurehead, and also a legislator and a, helping, working with the board, the council to have a long-term vision.
I'm tracking.
Yeah, and then you get to rely on staff, and like I said, we have very good staff from really top to bottom in Panama City Beach. That's one of the tragedies, I think, and what I shouldn't say tragedies. One of the opportunities in Panama City Beach is there is a lot of good work being done, and so it's making sure that's connecting with the people who live here as well as the other constituencies, and making sure that people who live here, have input, right? So, I imagine that's something we'll be working on. I mean, it's a challenge for any organization.
Yeah.
Right. There are other cities that you can look at benchmarks to compare yourself against, because while Panama City Beach is unique in many ways, it's not unique in having to relate to residents, to relate to visitors, to relate to business owners. And so there are other strategies that have worked elsewhere that we can try here, see if it's a good fit for the area, a good fit for the culture here. And that's just everything is you're trying to, and that's kind of nice about the way our system works is the federalism, and then pushing power, governmental authority down to the lowest level possible, is you get to make it fit the culture.
Yeah.
And see how it works, in your neighborhood, in your city.
Yeah, I think you're right about the culture aspect, because we do have a culture here that's it's pretty different from everywhere else in the state of Florida.
But it changes too, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
spring break changed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There was a cultural, it was before my time, but there was a dramatic cultural shift.
Yes.
So it can change.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I don't think anyone on the council has any intention to make that have a shift like that. That one I don't think was council driven. Maybe I'm always fascinated to hear that history, but
Yeah. Being somebody that grew up here my entire life. And then everything kind of changed. I think it changed for most of it's for the good. I think we're more of like a family atmosphere now.
Yeah.
And we got rid of the frat boy, kind of got away from that quite a bit. I did want to go into that real quick.
Yeah, transparency. So I will say that there are certain technical systems that will make it a lot easier to be more transparent.
Yeah.
So certainly, there are public records requests and stuff like that. But in terms of automated, hey, here's where we're at in terms of spending. Yeah. Here's where we're at in terms of a permit process. There's certain automated systems that need to be put in place so that you don't have a staff member, manually updating a web page so that people can see it. So transparency is a cultural value, but it's also, you need some processes, including technical processes, to make it easy, because it's really easy if someone's manually editing something for something to become out of date, and then if people are relying on that to make decisions and their decisions are out of date. So there are certain software systems that the city council has approved recently.
Really?
Yeah. And I want to be clear. Like I support it. The rest of the city council supports it. But this is something the city has been working on. Right? It's not. Everyone wants to get here.
Yeah.
It can take a little time, and maybe there are some learning opportunities. But yeah, so there are certain systems that we are. I think we're going out for contract on now that should really help make sure that we're being as automatically transparent as we can be. And there are other challenges like during the campaign, I was like, where are the contracts? Where are the contracts for all the ongoing projects? Well, listen, all the contracts are in the packet for the agendas. Right? You can go see all they're not the most easily accessible right now because you have to go dig through a 300-page packet to get the actual contract. But they're all accessible. I mean, you can get pretty much any contract. But, having someone manually pull them out, manually update a web page, it doesn't seem like a good use of staff time.
Yeah.
They are there, and we can help direct folks to them should they particularly inquire for them. But obviously, we want a self-serve system.
Yeah.
And you get a self-serve system through automation.
Yeah, I think that was kind of like one of the things that I've talked about for a while now. Like with social media is at its height, I think it's going to keep getting bigger. We'll probably get more platforms over the next couple of years, but
I don't.
Oh, you don't think so?
I suspect we may have. I want to say reached the end.
Oh,
but I will say it may have peaked. Just because there's only so many hours in a day. And I believe people are starting to realize that they need to live in the real world and not as much online. I would hope that any new social media companies that come forward are really focusing on connecting people and then getting them out in the real world, doing things together, rather than connecting communities virtually.
yeah.
That's good. That's good for certain, niche things. I know your producer Kendall's seems to be kind of an anime guy. Yeah, and I hear there's one or two communities, anime communities online. Is that accurate?
Just a couple.
Just a couple. Yeah, so maybe like 5. So for certain communities, like that makes sense, but now if you spend all your, you call it scrolling, right? Just all your time being sucked into this. Really, it's a different world.
Oh, dude.
It's this weird non-physical space that you get sucked into.
Yeah.
And then periodically, as you pull your phone out during the day, it's just like, I'm just going to transport myself into a different world right now.
That is true. I've never.
Well,
looked
there's
Yeah.
even a slang term they've made for it now where it's doom scrolling
Doom scrolling, yeah.
because you're just scrolling to oblivion, essentially.
Yeah, and the scrolling thing, actually, that was one of the startup companies I joined, is Pinterest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so they had I think they were the first that did that infinite scroll, where it used to be pages, you'd click next.
Yeah.
And in Pinterest, with all the pictures, you just keep scrolling, right? And so I think there's a particular, actually financial environment that made sense for encouraging that, because there is a financial environment. Capital was cheap because interest rates were low. So your money wouldn't make money other than these big bets for if you're an investor. So really, it was really encouraging investors to just bet on these things that didn't really have a business model.
Yeah.
I always joke that if you don't have a business model, what's your business model? It's advertising. I mean, just straight up, right? And so advertising means more time on app.
Yeah.
And now money is not as cheap. You need a better business model. And advertising is still heavily played. But again, there's only so much time in the day. I think people are starting to see the negative effects of spending too much time in that other world, that online world. With some of the negative effects you and I talked about in this conversation, which is, you can not really understand people. You don't have a real in-depth, the possibility for real in-depth conversation. Yeah. People can interact differently online. So,
Dude, you are not lying there.
Yeah.
I mean, you get those people that, I'm sorry, I know I interrupted you, but
that's fine.
everything is like, I'm not big on bullying anyway. I think it's kind of, but like the cyberbullying is kind of like a thing. And you get people online, I mean, we see it on our page all the time. And I'm one of those ones, and I don't know about, he that's kind of his job is to stay kind of up to date with all of that. But it's like, on social media, you're right. You get sucked into this world. And dude, it was the other day. I was sitting on my couch. This is the reason why I'm saying, like, what you're saying is so crazy, because I had a movie on. I was watching with my wife, and I just like picked up my phone out of habit. Like, I don't even remember what I was doing, and I just sat there and I was scrolling, and pretty soon, like, I kind of like, I felt like somebody was just like staring at me, and I look over and my wife's just like staring at me, and I was like, what's wrong? She goes, babe, you have literally been on your phone for the past 37 minutes. You have not even gotten away from your phone. All you've been doing is scrolling and commenting and stuff like that. But when you have like a podcast like this, obviously we're trying to get as many people as we can that engage, so we get followers and we get listeners, and then
I mean, it's part of the gig. It's part of the gig, right?
And then it's like we have these platforms that we're on. We're on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and then like, so then I'm going from like app to app to app, and like checking what were my views on this? What was this? What was this? Oh man, I gotta push something out because we're not. I just don't feel like we're at where we need to be, because we're not. I compare myself to other people.
Sure.
And that really does turn you into kind of like a different person in a way. And so I'm having to learn now to kind of like put it down. And then, and then you get the comments that come in, and you get people that are sitting there, and like, I'll have somebody on who's like a genuinely family man, nicest guy in the world, literally trying to get the community or make the community a better place. And then I have people that troll. You get the trolls that sit there and they just, all they want to do is just crap talk. What's going on. And then I get concerned with that, and then it's like, so man, it does.
Well, people like to have fun online, and some people's fun is trolling.
Half the stuff that is said in this trolling, they would never say in person.
Hey, Will, I'm checking to see if you have everything ready for the celebration. It's coming.
You can sell your home no matter what time of year it is, but the data shows that some months are better than others. We use a metric known as months of inventory to express a correlation between supply and demand. If, on average, there's 200 homes selling each month and there's 400 homes on the market, we'd say there's 2 months of inventory. As of December 2024, North Florida has nearly 8 months of inventory on the market, up slightly more than 20% since July.
Well, and there's an algorithmic reason for that. People have a kind of a negative bias. That's what gets interactions, and then highly interacted comments bubble up to the top, and so there's a bit of a natural negative feedback loop on that, and it's just it's part of that medium. It just is, unfortunately. And listen, we're both guys. When you're out with your buddies, you troll your buddies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, there's that a natural and a kind of healthy outlet for that impulse when you're in person.
Yeah.
And sometimes online, especially if you get too sucked into doing that behavior online, it can be twisted into something unhealthy.
Yeah.
But I suspect, and maybe I'm just an optimist on this one, I suspect people are seeing it. We're going to kind of see a little bit pulling back of online, people living online as much. I totally get you with the scrolling thing. It's really easy, and the time just vanishes.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it even happens at workplace. I think, like, a lot of people don't get a lot done at work because of it now. It's like you go to the bathroom, you come back, you sit down at your desk, and you're like, I'm just going to check something real quick. But what I was going to say to that was some of these apps, it's really funny because there has to be something. I'm sure there's some, and Kendall, you can weigh in on this if you want. But some of these apps, it's kind of funny. So yesterday we had a guys' night, and so I didn't touch my phone for about 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
And so when I went and I picked up my phone, I had like all these notifications.
Sure.
Notifications that I don't normally get.
Yeah.
Like this person started following you, and then it was, hey, this person interacted with you on this like post that was made, and then it's like some of it had nothing to do with me, and it was like they want me. I know that sounds stupid, but it's like it's almost as if
it's actually intentional.
algorithm thing.
It's a so they certain apps, again, because if you're an advertising business model, and so you need interactions, they'll literally use things that were developed for slot machines in order to draw people back. So no, that is probably entirely intentional. They saw that you weren't having a high level of interaction. They tried to push something. I don't want to say it's all chemicals, but the standard term is push something to give you that serotonin boost.
Yeah.
In order to get you back in.
Yeah, they want you to be sucked into that world.
Well, yeah, because the business model is you spend time on app.
Advertisements.
On the app, as you scroll by, you hit an ad.
Yeah.
I get paid if you interact with that ad. I get paid for just the view sometimes. I get paid more for the interaction, and I certainly get paid more if that interaction results in a sale.
Okay, so all of that is intentional.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, these are multi-billion-dollar businesses.
Yeah, and then it even got worse because I think Facebook was one of the ones that came out with the Meta thing. I don't think it took off, but it was like, didn't they have like a VR headset? You could actually live in like the Meta universe or something.
In the metaverse that looks like it's at Weave Sports.
Is that really what it? I don't know what it looks like.
I don't know. You remember the Nintendo Wii where you can go golfing?
Your head's like huge.
Yeah,
And,
I don't know. I never interacted with it. I just like, that looks like Wii Sports. It's like
it was
should be playing tennis or something.
cheap ripoff of VR chat, essentially.
Yeah. And I think there's a technical reason for that, probably to reduce processing power so that they can have a bunch of different devices on the app. But and there's probably also a social reason for that. The people who make these things, you don't want to say everything's a sophisticated conspiracy, but there are sophisticated people that make these things. So frequently the decisions are fairly well thought out.
So since you've been in office, what have you found that you were actually wrong about while you were running? Like something that you used to say or a particular way of looking at something, and now that you're in office, you've changed, like, you know what? I didn't look at that way, and like you kind of changed on that, because I feel like this happens a lot with guys.
Sure. And so I'll say I've gotten a lot more detail on the result or the challenges for so-called Segment 3 of the CRA. I got a lot more of the history there. And so that is South Arnold Drive, 79 from Back Beach to Front Beach.
Okay.
I'll say, I hit pretty hard on that not being done. Mm-hmm. And I've become more aware of the stumbling blocks that happened as a result of that. Now the city has learned, and as we go forward with the CRA, we'll write things, we'll write contracts better. But I will say probably segment 3 is a big one. It kind of did not start off on a good foot. There were some transitions in certain teams and leadership that I hit pretty hard on that one.
Yeah.
I would say, everyone can look back and say it could be done better, and it's really easy from the outside to say, oh, that should be done better. But when you're in it, you didn't necessarily make the mistakes, and you're just trying to dig out from it. So I'd say probably segment 3 is a good example of that.
Well, that's good. Well, at least and again, nobody likes to say that, they might not have had all the data or all the facts, and they don't ever like to say, hey, you know what, I was looking at that wrong. So the fact that you would even say that is pretty awesome. But I think you've noticed that too while working in government, that,
Listen, we can always do better.
Yeah.
We can always, there are certain restrictions, but we can always do better. And as we learn, there are other challenges like, why even start that segment and not connect it, right?
Yeah.
And you've had other elected officials on. A lot of folks, you get the good and the bad, or the good and the challenging, from the folks who've come before you, and but people, and it makes sense. People see it as a monolith. It's like, okay, this council, this board, inherited this, and they're trying to move it forward. I think that's you see that case around the municipalities. It's very rare to have extremely long-lived officials, or in terms of the elected time frame, where you can really say, oh, okay, cradle to grave, this was your fault.
Okay.
Right. So everyone's taking it, just like in general in life, you're taking it from somewhere, you're trying to take it to you're trying to finish it, take it somewhere else. And for especially road contracts, these take a while. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and that train, once it's left the station, is really, I wouldn't say it's really hard. It just gets more and more expensive.
Yeah, and wouldn't you agree that the people that you even serve with at the city level, and like what you're doing, there's everybody up there wants to see a better community.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody's up there trying to, nobody wants to make the community look bad. Nobody's trying to keep anything from the public.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to.
Yeah. And we're also all human beings.
Roger, tracking.
Right. We're all human beings. We have our own perspectives. We have our own strengths. We have our own weaknesses. I think we have a very complementary council. We have a good variety of perspectives. So I think we're pretty blessed in that respect. But we're different people. We're learning to work together. We're working together, and we do all want the same goal. We may have slightly different ways of trying to achieve that, and so it's like, okay, well, let's figure out, and that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate having you on. If you have a closing statement that you want our viewers to know about, we have a lot of people that look at our show from the beach. So, if there's anything else that you would like to put out there, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I would just say that we're all accessible. Our city cell phones are public. Our emails are public. We all try to get out in the community as much as possible. Reach out.
Sure.
Don't let. And we're working on some things. We have a Citizen Academy, which will kind of help provide some useful perspective of what different departments do, how budgeting works. So to try and help people live in reality. Because listen, everyone knows. No one, if you're not in government, you're not an expert in government, which is good, right? You don't want to be spending your precious free time or precious time you have on this earth having to learn everything. You don't learn exactly how your car is built in order to drive your car. So for those who are interested, we're working to provide mechanisms for them to find more information. We're working toward more sustainable automatic transparency. And in the meantime, reach out. I don't like when things seem to simmer for a really long time.
Yeah.
And people just get frustrated. And we talked about online earlier, the same amount of effort it takes to make an online post, almost the same mechanism, you could just email us. Right.
And you're going to respond.
And I'm going to respond, and or really, what I like doing is just having a phone call to chat about it. And there are going to be some things that we can't tell you because we don't know the future, or some things are up in the air. Timing of certain things, or that if you say it in public, you create this expectation that it's definitely going to happen that way. Whenever you say something in public, people forget all the caveats. You can say, hey, it looks 80% like this is going to happen. It's going to happen on, next Tuesday. When next Tuesday comes around, no one remembers you saying 80%, right? They're like, you said it was going to happen on next Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way our brains work. All those caveats just go out the window. So that can make you a little hesitant to give timelines like that.
Yeah.
And there are certain, when you're interacting with other agencies, and that's the other thing people don't see, is we're really a patchwork of different agencies, city, county, DOT, DEP. There's a lot of moving parts. And so when you're interacting with other agencies, it can be a challenge, because they have their own priorities, they have their own culture. And people want to come talk to you and be like, why don't you just tell me? It's like, well, because we don't have that responsibility. We try and advocate on your behalf. We try to find things out for you, but I can't commit to something for another agency.
Yeah.
I can commit to something. I can commit to working and advocating on your behalf, and bringing it up, making sure we have a good relationship with that agency. And there are many agencies that we do have a very good relationship with. And so those are just complications that people don't see, and I get it. Some people are like, why don't you just know? Well, because it's complicated. But reaching out, working with us, and one of the things I would love to see is a lot more collaboration. And there's this theory. Okay, we want effective government, and frequently that means smaller government. Okay, so there's two ways to get smaller government. You can shrink the government and hope that society builds up, or you can build up society, which means it makes it easier to shrink the government. I'll give you a perfect example, right? Homelessness. Okay, so in other parts of the country, dealing with the homeless problem is frequently a government issue. They run homeless shelters. They do all this stuff. We do it differently here. We have private nonprofits, churches, that they're the ones that are really tackling that issue, which means that the government's not doing it, which is great. So if there are other areas for those collaboration, that means, there's going to be certain things that government has to do, right? We have to do the roads. Sorry, libertarian friends. We have to do the water infrastructure. We have to do public safety. Again, sorry, libertarian friends. But there are other things that we can partner together, and then as people come together to do things, there's a saying online, you can just do stuff, right? Just, if there's a roadblock that's, a bad regulation or something, we're solution-oriented people, come bring it to us. But, You know, this is our community. This is your community. If you want something to happen, do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stuart, thank you so much for coming on. It was great. And my hat goes off to you and what you're doing out there. Anybody that is willing to put themselves out there and go through the hurdles of being part of government. And I think you're doing a great job, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate it. It's an absolute blessing. This place is wonderful, and it's wonderful because of the people here.
Yeah.
And there are many places around the country where the people can be a little bit of a challenge, and that is really not the case here. We got great people here, and everyone inside, outside of government wants the community to succeed, to get even better. And so we're all working together, and we're trying to figure out how to work even better together.
Sure. Well,
All right.
thank you.
Great.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
brother.